Hi, welcome back to StoryHive On Location Kelowna. I'm Robb and we're in Kelowna talking with Harley, a local indigenous animator, event speaker, and all-around creative genius.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to dive into your story and break the mind of an animator. So
yeah.
Let's hop in with who you are, where you're from, how you got into animating.
Yeah, my name's obviously Harley. I hail from Ahtahkakoop Cree Nation under Treaty 6 territory. I've lived in the Okanagan since 2002. I grew up in and out of the Canadian foster care system. And how did I get into animation? It was a episode of Sailor Moon back in the 90s. There's an episode where a character got turned into a demon, but before that, the character was really into making cartoons. And that was my first realization that cartoons were made by people. So I used that. It's like my motivation to get into the arts of animation. Like before that, it was just moving pictures and colors and boops and beeps, right? But then once you see behind the curtain, it's like, oh, the Wizard of Oz is just a dude. And that's how it worked out for me, yeah.
What really captivated you about animating versus becoming like a filmographer or being an artist who draws?
I believe it started with working with clay and Play-Doh and making characters and then using action figures to tell these stories as a kid. And I was really good at telling stories, at least for myself. Because growing up in the Canadian foster care system, there's a lot of isolation and personal isolation that happens with that. And I would use these characters and TV shows and movies and cartoons as like a getaway for that. So telling my own stories to get out of the crazy, hectic environment I was in, storytelling was just a natural pathway for me. So when it came to choosing animation as a medium, it was super simple because it's just moving characters and making them believable as to what real life is. I'm pretty sure that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. And storytelling is one thing. And like I'm a total geek for fantasy books. I have 5 books. And the storytelling aspect is an amazing thing that I think, especially nowadays, is overlooked.
I'm at a point in my life where I'm trying to figure out what my art style is. And it wasn't till doing local Comic-Cons and selling my art and stuff where people were coming up to me and telling me, oh, I love your style. It's such a style. And I kept hearing that. And when you hear that enough times, you eventually take a step back and look at what you've created and, oh, I do have a style and this is me. And it's been there this whole time. I've been so preoccupied on perfection that I didn't see the flowers in front of me.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. The biggest personal growth within yourself comes from those moments of extreme dauntlessness where it feels like the weight is on your shoulders. You can either sink or swim. I tend to sink for a little bit and stay there. And then I realize there's a way out of this. There's always a way out of it. And working out of that, that's where you start being reflective, introspective, and you start thinking about the ways you can swim through this big river that you're in and grasp onto rocks and get onto land for a little bit before you go back down the river a bit more and find a different village and all that. That's a weird way of looking at it, but that's what comes to mind for me right now. But
I can see the storyteller in you come out when you're passionate about something.
Oh, yeah.
I feel that's like a common thing among people who are very creative is like you spark that interest in them and they're just like the fire burns and it's an amazing thing. Over the time from like realizing, oh, I really enjoy animation, cartoons, and storytelling, what was the point that you actually physically started creating animations of your own?
My story is basically moving back and forth from the reserve back to living in BC, back to the reserve in Saskatchewan. One of those times where I was back on the reserve, I was living with my grandma, otherwise known as my cookum in Cree. I'd have Post-it notes and I would sit with my buddy Jordan Sasakamoose and we would just make animations out of the Post-it notes because you can use them like a flip book. And we would make stick figures, just skateboarding, doing kick flips and manuals and just stupid things like a character throwing a rock across the Post-it note, hitting another character and it flying and just breaking the fourth wall and jumping through. It was just wild stuff we did with Post-it notes, and it just, again, it's set like its roots in me of what animation is, and that's the basic form of animation is post-it notes. Yeah.
How did you initially get into it as like a job and doing that?
I think because of my upbringing and then being in high school and being a teenager and being scared of the future, I was more scared of the present than I was the future, because the present meant, again, going in and out of the foster care system, the troublesome times that we had living at home. I would focus on the future because I wanted out of those situations. So at a very early age, I knew, like after figuring out what animation is and who it was that was making these cartoons, I decided that this could be my career. And I knew at the age of 16, this is what I wanted to do. I basically spent my whole time in the art room at school in Seton in Vernon. And I met a teacher there, Miss Thompson, Shelley Thompson, who's an amazing teacher. She kind of helped me focus on what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be and kind of align me with that path. Because I kept telling her, like, I want to make cartoons for a living. And when I would tell people that in elementary school, I was always hit with, oh, you're never going to do that. You're not a good artist. There's no way you can, to be an animator, you have to be like a great artist. And enough people telling me this stuff, I'm just going to eventually go against the grain, right? But at that time, I was just drawing anime all the time. And she would be like, anime is a great career, but there are other things. And if you want to like progress, maybe you want to try focus on something else. I'm like, I don't know who I am without anime. Thankfully, it came to grade 12. I didn't have enough credits to graduate. And that's because I was moving back and forth from BC to Saskatchewan. So I didn't have enough credits. But then because Miss Thompson was married to the principal, I don't know if this is true, but I think she put in like a good word to the principal. Well, like, this kid knows what he wants to do with life. He's got it figured out. I wasn't going to graduate. I didn't have enough credits. So I went and had a meeting with the principal, and I explained to him, like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go to school for animation. I want to make cartoons for a living. And I was so driven and focused on that. I feel like he could feel like the passion. So he's like, okay. He just went over to his computer, started typing. He's like, oh, you have credits here, credits there from Saskatchewan that didn't carry over. So I think I did have enough credits to graduate. It didn't work out that way, but we figured it out. Boom, I'm graduating. As soon as we knew that, Miss Thompson helped me figure out scholarships and bursaries, and I ended up graduating with 6 scholarships. We had to enter like a competition where a bunch of kids are in a gymnasium showing off their passion and what they want to do, and different people who give away scholarships come through and they decide who gets these scholarships. And they got to me, and I had to explain myself and pitch myself to these people. And with it came, I know exactly what school I wanted to go to. It's the Art Institute of Vancouver. And I think having that figured out and the passion that I was giving off, I feel like that really showed that like I knew what I wanted to do. Yeah, I graduated with 6 scholarships, got accepted into the Art Institute of Vancouver. Long story short, got to Vancouver. Day I was supposed to start, I didn't have my funding figured out, so I had to drop out of the Art Institute of Vancouver. So I didn't go to the Art Institute of Vancouver.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. That was a long-winded story, but that gives a little bit of backstory on how I got to where I am.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did you end up going to school afterwards?
Yes.
Or, yeah?
It took a long time to do that. Took working at Tim Hortons, took working at A&W, Famous Players, which is now Cineplex. And then I worked construction for 3 or 4 years. But because of that job, I was like, what the heck am I doing? I'm not doing what I set out to do. I need to figure this out. So I reached out to the Friendship Center in Vernon, and we figured out that there is an animation school within Kelowna called the Center for Arts and Technology. Applied there, got in. This time, having the knowledge of not getting my funding figured out, I planned crazy. It took a lot of work. Took a lot of like sleepless nights just to get the funding figured out, but thankfully I was able to work with my band in Saskatchewan, Ahtahkakoop Cree Nation, and the Silks Nation band here. They both co-funded my tuition for Center for Arts and Technology, so I was able to go. It was extremely hard and extremely difficult for that 2 years because a lot of things happened, but got my foot in the door, really what it did. I think part of the reason why I didn't get the funding for my tuition for the Art Institute was it was just too expensive. And at the time, the band couldn't justify investing in the arts at the time, because most bands, just from experience, tend to want to push towards safer jobs, like trades and stuff like that. And arts is looked down upon in that realm of like work. At least at the time it was. I think it's a bit different now. But yeah, but finding out like, oh, someone else is willing to invest in my future, let's give it a try, and it worked out.
So over your career as an animator, what was your biggest personal struggle? Not career struggle, but personal struggle to overcome in becoming a professional animator?
It would have to be what I was talking about within the 2 years that I was at Center for Arts and Technology. The first year, my older brother passed away. And then it was just I was so focused on my goal of getting into this industry, and I felt if I took time to stop and grieve, that I would fall behind. So he passed away, and I just pushed those feelings inside, and I just didn't deal with them. And then going into my second year, my little sister passed away, and all those feelings that I was feeling with my brother passing away that I didn't deal with resurfaced there. But I was so close to my goal of just graduating, which after that was supposed to be work and animating. Again, I pushed those feelings in, and I didn't deal with them. And then comes graduation time, greatest time of my life. The chief brought my whole family down from the reserve for my graduation. I was gifted a star blanket for it. It was an awesome experience. And then I graduated, and you have this dream of, I'm going to get a job right away. And within the Okanagan at the time, there wasn't that big of an animation industry. I was just waiting. And part of the waiting was the depression that I was pushing deep down, right? I got a job at Walmart, worked there for 3 months. And then at that end of the 3 months, the realization that I'm not getting a job right now. I didn't deal with these traumas that I'd pushed away. They all came to the surface all at once. And it was the lowest of low moments. I had to move back to Vernon. One of the biggest things you find with urban indigenous people that is they usually don't have a failsafe to fall back on. You don't have family members you can go live with in the city. It's half the time it's moving back to the reserve and picking up where you left off, right? For me, that was not an option. I couldn't do that because I still had something to prove to not only myself, but my family back home and the reserve. And being indigenous, there's like this weight that there's an expectation that you're supposed to be successful and you're supposed to do great things. At least for me, that's the expectation I put on myself. So I went through a crazy depression, the trauma of not dealing with my family members passing on. It was just, when it all hits you, you're at your lowest moment, right? I just wasn't doing well, but I still was swimming in that river trying to get out, right? So I take odd jobs. I did painting houses for a bit. And I came to a turning point where I was either going to paint houses for a living and go full bore into that and start a company, or try again. And it came to one morning, I had this weird dream where some crazy things happened in the dream, but it made me introspective within my dream. And then I woke up crying, and I was like, what the heck? So I was like, I need to run. I just need to get out of here. So I got up, ran to the door, and my roommate, Tico Thor, he was putting his boots on, getting ready to go to work at 5 a.m. And he's, what are you doing? You're never up this early. I'm like, I just need to go. I need to run. So I booked it out the door. I just ran. I ended up at the top of this hill, and I felt the weight of everything, and I felt like I just needed to let it go. So I just sat on the top of this hill, and I just cried. And then eventually I ran out of tears. And then I just started asking the universe or whoever would listen, I just need help. I need answers for all this stuff that's happening, and I just need it to work. And I basically asked the universe for help is what it is. And dust myself off, walked back down the hill, got back home. And a week later, my best friend from college, he calls me up and he's like, hey man, you met Todd Ramsey and Ashley Ramsey while you were at Center for Arts Technology. Todd Ramsey was one of my 2D animation teachers. And Ashley Ramsey was Todd's wife, who was also doing stuff behind the scenes within the tech industry. He said they just started an animation company called Yeti Farm Creative. You should call them and see if you can get an interview. I was like, oh, no way. Called Ashley Ramsey and was like, hey, could I come in for an interview? I'd love to like just talk to you about animation. I go in the next week, resume in my hand, and I was like, I would do anything to be in this industry. I'll make the coffee, I'll sweep the floors, I'll just do anything. And she knew me from Center for Arts Technology, and she also could tell that I was like passionate. Passion was the thing, but not an overbearing passion. It was just like, this is what I need to do, not what I want to do. This is what I need to do. I need it more than air. She was like, yeah, we'll find something for you to do on Monday. Just come in. I was like, okay. For her, it was just like a simple okay. I walked out the door. For me, it was like that scene from that Will Smith movie. Oh, what's it called?
I Pursued Happiness?
Yes. Where he walks out and he starts clapping. That's what it felt like. And the reason why it felt like that is because I was still holding the resume that I had in my hands. I didn't even need to give her my resume. It was just, that's what it was. And it felt like I was on the right path. And it actually didn't feel like, I knew I was on the right path. This is where I was supposed to be. And that got me my foot in the door for working in animation. Pretty wild. Yeah.
It is. You have an amazing story, and I'm a big believer in manifestation. When I hit 30, I was in a crazy depression, didn't know what I was going to do with myself, and did the same thing. I asked the universe, I need something that's going to allow me to be a single dad and raise a child and be able to take care of things. And I don't know how it happened, but this career and lifestyle that I'm in now has slowly just built itself, and I forget to often sit back and look at the accomplishments, because like you mentioned earlier, like you had to stay focused on the future because the present is too detrimental to focus on. And I've lived like that forever. And I feel, do you ever feel that now that you're out of the struggle, you're still naturally susceptible to thinking about the future only because that is all you've known is like how to be better?
Yeah.
And make it, I find I struggle with that daily. It's just taking that to step back to, and especially now as parents, to like look where you were and where you are and just be like, wow.
I feel like it's a feeling of it could be taken away just like that. It's too good to be true. It's too easy to feel like you could go back to that, and you don't want to go back to that. There was a time where when I was working for Yeti Farm, I worked for them for 8 years, and at the end of the 8 years, I felt myself become complacent. I felt stagnant within my own career, and it made me wonder, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? It's because I worked for 8 years, and I worked so hard to get there, especially to get to a point where I'm competent within my field, and I know how to do my job. Something was wrong. A lot of things were wrong, actually. With that success comes a lot of things that you need to deal with personally. Obviously, it's not just, I got to where I'm at, I beat the video game, and I turn it off and go to the next thing. It's like there's DLC constantly coming in, and you have to keep working at it. So at that 8 years, I had my first kid, and I was confused, and I felt lost because I didn't know what it meant to be a parent, because I wasn't raised by parents. I was raised by a residential school survivor and a single mom who was always fighting with the government to keep her kids, right? So when I became a parent and everything was fine, I felt confused by that, and that was generational trauma that I hadn't been dealing with. So that's where I finally accepted the idea of counseling and therapy, and I was at my lowest again, and I was successful. It was so confusing. Thankfully, my wife was there for me every step of the way. Her and I were able to figure out like a counselor that I could go to, and I had this fear that a therapist was going to tell me how to feel and how to think, and I didn't. As like a skater and like an artist, I felt that was wrong. That was weird, right? I couldn't get past that idea, and that's part of the reason why I didn't go to a therapist for so long. But then when I did, I realized it wasn't that. It was nothing like that. It was like someone giving you the tools to figure it out for yourself, but they're there to pass you an oar and help you build the boat while you're in the river, right? And it was a wild experience, but then it led me to realize that I need to scare myself, and what that meant was not renewing my contract within Yeti Farm, leaving the nest kind of thing. I applied for a job at Titmouse, Vancouver. I got the job, and I also got a contract for Yeti Farm, and I had to turn that contract down at Yeti Farm. And I was so scared to go and talk to Todd and Ashley, because these guys were like my parents in a sense. And I just said, you know what, they'd want the best for me, so why not just tell them that? So I did. I went to Ashley and Todd's office, and I was like, this is what's happening. I'm not working on myself. I need to do this for myself. And they were just so supportive. They're like, yeah, you need to do what you need to do. Like, just do it. And I was scared of like them being like, oh, you leaving us. But it wasn't that. It was sometimes just facing your fears is the best option. Running away from your fears leaves you scared of what that future might be, as opposed to just facing it head on. And then I've been with Titmouse for 4 years now. It's been awesome. It's been cool.
That's amazing. Over your career as an animator, is there a specific project that has been your favorite?
Frog and Toad. I grew up with those books. I didn't really read them because I wasn't that great at reading as a kid. And I didn't have, again, parenting, not really there. So there wasn't really anybody there to read to me. So I would look at the pictures. And I think that is too part of the reason why I became an animator. It's because I was always looking at pictures and I was animating those pictures in my head because there was no one reading me, telling me what the story was. So I'd make up these stories in my head. Wild just to think of that right now. And I think when you watch the show on Apple TV, you get this sense of calmness and, oh, this is like really chill. I like watching this. And it feels like the books, really. Very proud of that. The second thing I would say is working on a movie, which that was always part of one of my goals. I want to work on a movie and see my name in the credits. And it was Baby Shark's big movie, which was really cool. There was a K-pop band on it. There were sharks. It's just really wild stuff I got to work on. Because it came out like during COVID, or just a little bit after COVID. So like it only played in 2 theaters, one in Vancouver and in Korea, I think. But that's fine. I still made a movie, right? Those are my 2 biggest accomplishments, I think.
There's a lot of incredible points that you bring up, and I think there's a lot of eye-opening things for me as well that I relate to heavily. And I think that especially when you're faced, like you said earlier, you're faced with hard times and you're born as a survivor, and a person who has to survive through every aspect of your life from a young age, it makes you quick on your feet.
I feel like it's a mental checklist of these are the bad things that are going to happen. Be ready for them constantly. It's a high anxiety mentality growing up, because that's all my life was, just anxiety. And then once you're safe, anxiety, like safe feels uncomfortable because you're used to the anxiety at that point.
You touched on a very valid point that I think a lot of males especially aren't willing to admit, is going to counseling.
Yeah.
And how helpful it is. Because when I first went to counseling, my initial thought when being told I need a counselor was, I don't need help.
Yeah.
I'm a man, I gotta man up, I gotta take care of this as a man and be a man. That term, as the older I get, I realize that man up concept is it can go both ways. It can be when you're being too whiny, man up is a good thing. It's like when you're supposed to feel emotions too.
Yeah.
So you can't suppress that just because you've got to be strong. Like being strong means accepting all feelings, not just suppressing them. And I think it's a very inspiring thing to hear that, I went to counseling and it made me a better person. I feel we need more people who are willing to admit that counselors are needed. Okay, and being emotional is not a bad thing, and expressing emotion is not a bad thing.
Anybody who works in the creative industry knows that revisions are a thing. Critique is a thing. You cannot have a thin skin when you are working in this industry, because criticism is part of the game. It is the game, really, because the end goal is to push a product that is at its best. And if it's not to the standard, you're going to get called out on it. Which comes with another thing of, don't fall in love with your work. I constantly remind myself that, because every time that I've been like, this is the best animation I did, there's no way this is going to have revisions. Laundry list of revisions. I'm like, dang. But then there's times where I'm like, oh man, this isn't that great. There's no way I'm going to get a laundry list of, and then you hand it in. It just goes through. That's it. And you got to find that fine line in between loving your work and just laying in the cut.
Loving yourself too much and self-doubt.
Yeah.
That middle ground is a very good thing.
Very easy to wane off that path. Yeah.
You also do a ton of other things on the side.
Oh yeah.
What do you do like for events? What do you do speaking events? And
Yeah.
what kind of events?
So I do public speaking. So far I've only done it I did a public speaking event at Pentacon in Penticton, where I just had a room to myself and I spoke to the crowd of 4 or 5 people, which is awesome. That's 4 or 5 people that were interested in listening to my story, right? And it's just sharing my story and like the struggles that I went through, just what I told you. And the idea is to inspire the next generation to potentially choose tech as a option. Doesn't always have to be trades. And now I say tech because animation is just a sector of it, right? You can do coding, you can do backgrounds, you can be the person filming, right? You have all these different options, and that's what I wanted. At least I hope my story gives off. One of my goals in life was to go back to my reserve and be a guest speaker there and share my story to the kids, right? And thankfully last year I was able to do that, which was so cool. I thought it was going bad, but then at the end of it, like all these kids came running up to me and were like, oh yeah, ask me all these questions. It didn't fill the ego in me. It filled that void in myself, that little version of me needed to see. I needed to see someone who looked like me making these things, and I need to know that a person did that looked like them. That makes sense. Yeah, I wanted to see me in growing up, and it felt a little healing for that kid version of me. And thankfully, next year, end of January, I'll be heading back to my reserve for my first workshop. So I'll be teaching them about animation, behind the scenes look at what goes into making a show, an episode, post-it notes, animation, and I'm thinking stop motion, just to touch on that a little bit.
I feel like just hearing your story and speaking with you and your passion is like, you're the one who's supposed to go and inspire this next generation.
Yeah.
There's no one else but you, in my mind. Like, you have the background, you have the history, you have the drive. It just needs that one person to stand in the mosh pit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the wall of death comes, and it's like you are that one person who's
Elbows
standing.
up.
Yeah, you're the one person who's standing there. And I get goosebumps listening to your story because I can relate and understand because I grew up with friends who are indigenous. So I've physically seen the pain that they go through.
Yeah.
To see such a success story come out of there and to come back and inspire another generation that's what it is. That's the whole point of being a creative.
When Chief Ahtahkakoop, the guy my reserve's named after, he signed the treaties for Treaty 6. He was part of the guys who did it. When he signed it, he left a quote saying, "Let us not think of ourselves, but let us think of our children's children." I understood that before I had kids. I knew what it meant, but then I had kids, and it really made me realize, like, I need to focus more on a movement of inspiring the next generation. In 2019, I was part of a study out of Vancouver. This company called True Calling did a thing where they're finding how many minorities worked within the tech sector. I was part of that study, and in a data pool of 4,000 people, 0.07% identified as indigenous. So it worked out to being like 20 or 19 people. My math's not that great, but 20 or 19 people in a data pool of 4,000 in BC alone identified as indigenous. Me being one of them. And knowing how many people are within BC, that shocked me. Like, it kind of lit a fire in me to like just try sharing my story, because like, what's the worst going to happen? That percentage goes up. Thankfully, it's been going up gradually every year, but in 2020, it went up to 1.5%, I believe. So now we're in the 1%, which is pretty cool. One of my biggest goals is doing a tour across Canada, speaking at different reserves and sharing my story. But the one thing I want to do more is go way up north into Northwest Territories and those reserves that are rarely seen, like people fly to, and that's what I want to go to and speak to those kids. I've told my story enough times that I can. It's kind of like doing a stand-up bit. I know the parts that hit, and I need to focus on those. I think I got it down. Yeah, I think I wasn't confident last year because it was just the start of it, and now I'm just like, okay, I'm getting old. There's other things I want to do too, but this right now, I need to be my focus, so.
I think it's just the age range. I think a quote that I used to do this at U-Brew when I lived in Vernon, And I had this one client that I'd always sit down and have a nice glass of wine with. And he was this old gentleman. And one day he just told me, you know what, you have to grow old, but you don't have to grow up. And it has always stuck with me that I'm like, yeah, like I'll grow in age, but like mentally, I'm always going to be that like 22, 25-year-old Rob who's high energy. Like I may have calmed down a bit in my 30s, but I'm just hitting, in my mind, I'm just hitting my prime. Like it took me the 35 years to get through all my struggles to get to where I'm at and capable of being like, hey, now what do I want to accomplish?
Yeah.
And it took me a long 12 years prior of self-doubt being like, I'm not where I need to be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was 30 that I was like, I got to give up that. There is no expectation of what I'm supposed to do other than just to be me.
Yeah.
And now as a parent, like you said, it kind of changes and you start to think legacy. That is just a weird thing to think about, but it is, you don't think of a legacy until you have children, and then you realize that thing has my name, and I've got to make sure that thing's name isn't ruined when it's older. And so it's like trying to create and build that foundation when you never really had that foundation. Like you're gonna make, and I had an interview with DJ Thistle, and like he said, he's a parent, and you're gonna make mistakes, and unfortunately all those mistakes are gonna be when they're young. Luckily it's all when they're young, and you can still grow past it. But I often think daily, because I'm so focused on trying to build a future for them and I'm not focused on the current, I'm like, am I being a bad parent because now I'm neglecting? When it was like, so it's like a very fine line of like, how do you play that game properly without thinking yourself negative on yourself as a parent? I'm like, I struggle with it daily because I'm like, man, there's so much to do and so much I want to do with them, but to give them that future, it's like then you start to realize that's why our upbringing was the way it was, because it is not easy.
Yeah, tons of variables. One, who are you with your kids? Who are you without your kids? Am I still me with my kids? Am I still me without my kids? Failure is the biggest part of life. I feel like you fail more than you will succeed, especially when it comes to parenting. I fail every single day with my kids. But the thing I try to change the most is after I apologize for my failures, I try to change. It doesn't happen all the time. It won't happen all the time, but to acknowledge it is to understand that this little person sees you as a hero regardless of what you do wrong. And going back to feeling like a kid in a male 38-year-old's body, right? You get to be that little kid still with them. You get to like tap into that childhood version of yourself when you're like playing games with them or like action figures and stuff. It's a wild experience having kids, and it's very eye-opening. It makes you so introspective because you want the best for them and you want the best for yourself so you can be the better version for them.
Yeah.
Wild.
Have you ever thought of doing a show for your kids or for kids by yourself? Like you taking on that whole project yourself?
I have, behind me there's like a bunch of post-it notes, and that's like a storyline that I was writing about. It was definitely gonna be a cartoon, but it's like about me going back to the reserve as in my younger version of myself. But it's just showing, I wanted it to show what it is really like on the reserve in cartoon form. I'm still working on that one. I have 3 other pitches that I'm working on that might be shorts. And yeah, I have been working on things to show them, but it's just, that part's hard because I know what goes into it, and having worked in the industry, I need to apply for things and look for funding and stuff like that, and that's what I'm working on now too, because there's like a point that happened this year where I realized like, oh hey, there's funding out there. Why don't I start developing ideas and actually pushing them towards getting pitched, or not pitched, getting funding for, because I'm not getting any younger and there's still things I want to do. Those are some of the things I want to do, and I want to leave my mark on that industry too. Really cool.
Your industry, how has it been since the emergence of AI in the last couple of years? Have you been, we were talking about it briefly, but I'm like, I've always wanted to dive into it with an animator.
Yeah, so when AI first started kicking off, really, I wasn't too scared. I was like, no, it can't do hands. We could barely do hands. But since it's been updating itself every year, holy smokes, it's only getting better. And now it's doing 2D animation. Not competently, but we thought the same thing about hands. There's a little bit of worry there, But at the same time, there is a movement of pushback because people want human interaction, human emotion within the work that they're being sold, right? When you see AI slop, you know it.
Yep.
And it doesn't it feels wrong. And my daughter has been a big proponent of understanding that, because she'll see it and she'll be like, is that AI? But I can feel there's
that resistance.
She knows that there's no heart and soul behind what she's seeing. And that's not me telling her that's AI. It's her figuring it out for herself,
because she sees you as an animator doing it.
Yeah.
And then she sees what the computer is doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As for the industry as itself, being in one sector of the industry, I only see the animation work, but what I'm hearing is a lot of certain jobs are being taken over by it. So at least when it comes to big corporations, I think they want to save money and time. And if they can do that, they will. Like backgrounds, amazing background artists I've seen in my whole career. What AI can do is it's ruining that industry. It already did with logo animation, logo design especially. Like, how do you compete with someone who is like a mom and pop shop who needs a logo, but they can't afford to pay someone to do it, when they can just put it into AI and they have a logo?
Yeah.
You can tell what AI logo it is, right? Yeah, it's just, I feel like we're all just in this waiting game of what is it going to do next, and that's what it feels like right now.
I feel like all of the creative industries are.
Yeah.
And all of us feel that it'll hit a limit where it won't be able to progress further.
It's starting to it's starting to eat itself is what it's
doing. And that's naturally what's going to happen as a program. Programs are going to have viruses and flaws, and they're not going to work all the time. They need to be updated. But you can't beat that genuine, authentic soul. And that's one thing that I like to bring. That's why I tend to bring up the AI topic. It's not because I'm trying to clown on it at all, but it's to get perspectives on it, because me personally as an artist, I'm like, I think it comes from a musician's perspective too, because a lot of people may hate me for it, but as an artist my creative outlet is music. I don't want to have to focus on making video content to push my music, or relying on AI songs. Music is what it is, and at the end of the day, there's so many facets to being a musician, where you need artwork, you need posters, you need all these different elements that you can't do by yourself. So for me, writing, if I want to write a bio, I'm not going to spend 4 hours writing a bio. I'll type in my ideas to ChatGPT and then take what it says and reword that in my own words, because I'm just I'm not thinking of grammar. I'm terrible with grammar. That has so much pushback from people in the music industry, even just using it to that extent. So I like to talk about it because it is a very varying opinions, and some people are heavily for it. And I've met artists who are like, yeah, I use it to get inspiration for a painting, and then I take that. And I'm like, if you're using it in the proper form, where it's like a tool to help you and you're not just being lazy to get a job done, I think then it's a valuable thing. But it's you're just using it to, I need a logo, give me a logo, and then you use that logo, that's a no-no.
Yeah.
I wish I was wearing my shirt, because I had an image for my hip-hop shirt. I wanted a trash panda, but I wanted him to be hip-hop, metal oriented, and I couldn't physically put that down to give to an artist without it being scratched. So I asked a ChatGPT to give me an idea of what it would look like, and then I sent that to an artist and told him, hey, this is AI. I want you to do it by hand.
I feel like that's fine, because you're still paying the artist. You have the idea.
Sometimes it's beneficial to use that to get that concept out.
It's hard to sometimes get the idea out. I will say that the writing part of it is write out what I'm going to say, and because of my dyslexia, it's one point, and then the other point will be down at the bottom when it should be up there. And it's really messy. I'm like, hey, can you fix this? Fix the grammar on this. And it just places things where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
It just helps me align my thoughts properly. Now, I don't use it for writing my stories or anything like that, because I feel like you should own that, right? But going further on that point, people who live on reserves and stuff like that, I know for a fact, for me, when I was growing up, writing these applications and applying for bursaries and stuff like that, just getting the paperwork and writing my name, easy. Everything after that, super difficult. Just doing that is so daunting that most people will stop. a lot of people do stop at those points. And in that sense, I feel like ChatGPT is helpful because it helps. It's a barrier. There's a barrier for people on the reserves, from my perspective. And this helps break that barrier down and makes it a bit easier for them. I did try something that was actually fun. With my daughter, we drew out musical notes just on a piece of paper, took a picture of it, and I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, can you play these sounds? And it played the sounds. So she's getting an understanding of what the notes are. Not so much she's going to make a song, but she knows that these notes make something. So now this inspires her brain to be like, okay, maybe I should start learning about music and understanding what these notes actually are. Like,
and they start diving into the science of music and understanding.
Yeah. So there are benefits to ChatGPT, and there are not benefits.
My final question, which I like to ask, if you were to give an aspiring animator, artist, as how they could start their career based off of your knowledge, what would it be?
Make your bed. Every day, make your bed. For both the reason of understanding structure and discipline. And if you are ever in a depressive state or a state of an ADHD freeze, just get out of bed and make your bed. That's the first step. And if that's all you can do for the day, that's fine. You had one success. How it transfers to getting into the industry, understand your fundamentals of whatever craft you're going for. It helps you make a checklist. You understand, again, discipline, right? It's very hard to stay with that discipline, but always fall back to making your bed. Okay, I have a checklist of things that I need to do before I submit a demo reel. I have to have my vision of what my arcs are, overlapping action, overshoot and settle, lip sync. Your checklist is there. It's there. I've got it. Submit it. If I get the job, I get the job. If I don't, come back again, make your bed, start over. Small goals. Just submitting your demo reel is a goal in itself. You did it. You got to that point. Yeah, it sounds really simple and like it might not be helpful, but if you think about it fundamentally, what it is just discipline. And you could say, I'll make all the coffee in the world to get into this job, but if you don't have the fundamentals and understanding of what the fundamentals are, then I don't know if it will show to the employer. And then the other thing would be passion. If you've listened or heard my story in any of this, I've constantly said passion. There can be overbearing passion and there can be underbearing passion. You have to find right in the cut. Where is that? What is that? Who am I within that realm of passion? I feel like those two things are the biggest things you need to have.
Harley, I want to thank you for having me and
thank you.
Your story. It's absolutely inspiring, and I've done, I want to say, for these shows at least 50, and this is probably one of my top 3 most inspirational ones for people who have made it from rock bottom to like rock star.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're a well collected person, and
thank you. Yeah.
It was really, truly a pleasure to meet you. So
thank you.
And I want to thank you guys for coming by. If you'd like to be on the show, there will be a QR code at the bottom of the screen that you can scan, and it'll take you to a form. Just follow the form, and we'll get through that together as a team. And I'm Robb O'Day. This has been On Location Kelowna, and we'll see you next time.